Raise your hand if you've ever heard the story of Samson.
Oh, that's me, brother.
Raise your hand if you've ever heard the story of Samson.
That's not you.
Alright, so about a third of you guys. So, for those of you that have heard the story of Samson before, do you guys know what he was kind of known for in the Bible? His hair, yeah. But what did his hair give him the access to? Strength. Super strength.
Like me.
What? Oh, yeah. Sorry. Maybe that's bad being on. But yeah, Samson had super long hair, and the reason for that was because when he was born, his mom made like a deal with God, basically saying no blade will ever touch his hair. In exchange for that, he has this crazy, unbelievable strength. He was like the Hulk in the Bible. All right, this guy would literally take on entire armies on his own. It says that he slayed thousands and thousands of enemy soldiers with just the jawbone of a donkey. All right, a bone of a donkey. This dude is the definition of a Chad. All right.
X game mode.
Yeah, he's Chad going X Games mode. All right. So this is Samson, and his only weakness is if he gets his hair cut, he'll lose all of his strength. That's it. He didn't have any other weakness except for women. Women were his weakness. One specifically by the name of Delilah. Delilah was a Philistine, which, in case you didn't know, the Philistines are the bad guys in most of the Old Testament. So, first of all, Samson shouldn't have been fooling around with Delilah because she's a Philistine. But he was madly in love with her. He thought she was super hot, apparently. She was a baddie. And I'm sure that's how Samson described her. He said, I don't care if she's a baddie, because she's a baddie, all right? She's bad in two different ways. And this girl, Delilah, she only pretended to be in love with Samson. And she was trying to figure out the key to his strength because Samson had been kicking the butts of the Philistines his whole life up until this point. And she was a Philistine, so she was like a double agent, all right? Nasty woman. And Samson is a very dumb man. He was strong, but very stupid. So he just kept on sticking with her. She would be like, all right, what's the key to your strength? And he would make up a lie. And then in his sleep, Delilah would tie him up and do that thing. So he would say something like, you can't clip my fingernails or something. And in his sleep, she would tie him up and she'd clip his fingernails, and then she would let in Philistine soldiers and she'd be like, Samson, the Philistines are here. And then he'd break free of the ropes and kick their butt. Did that over and over again. Samson was just too stupid to be like, yo, she's working against me. And yeah, he was really dumb. And honestly, this has probably happened to you guys. Some of you guys have heard before where you're like, oh no, he won't cheat on me again. No, she won't cheat on me again. But then you stick with them. Yeah, some of you probably know what I'm talking about. So anyways, this happens time and time again. And Samson is just too stubborn to realize what's going on. And eventually, he finally tells Delilah, hey, if you cut my hair, I'll lose all of my strength. One night, Delilah ties him up, and she cuts his hair, and the Philistines break in. And just like always, Samson tried to break free of the ropes, but this time, he couldn't do it. And he was thrown in prison. He was mocked by the people. He had his eyes gouged out. So I mean, it was a pretty rough scene. You know, tough looks for Samson. And that's the kind of thing that happened to Samson. You know, he was in bondage, both when he was sleeping and then he was thrown in chains and thrown in prison. This idea of bondage. Now, over spring break, I told this story to a couple of the leaders in here, but I'm going to tell it all to you guys. How many of you guys have ever heard of a riptide?
A riptide? Is
Riptide.
that a shape on Minecraft?
Yeah, no. So, I had heard of riptides before, right? And going into spring break, I had never been in one. I swam in the ocean a lot of times. I've always heard that riptides were dangerous, but I'd never seen one, and I was just like, whatever, right? So, one day, I was actually at a different beach, and I just heard this. My dad called me later. Some of the people that we were with got sucked out in a riptide and they had to be saved. I wasn't there, and I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of crazy, but whatever, they didn't die. And then a couple days later, I went to the same beach as them because I was staying in a different house at that point. And I was just laying out on my beach towel, and I like look over, and I see like two guys' names are Isaac and Adam. They're little beefcakes, all right. I mean they're like two Justin Eckingtons, all right. So I see them running out, and I'm like, okay, they got this handled. These guys are Chads, all right. And I like look out, and I'm like, oh, someone's probably caught a riptide. They got this handled. So I roll back over, and I like try and go back to sleep. And all of a sudden, I start hearing a bunch of voices screaming, help, help, help. And I'm like, ugh. And I look over, and one of the guys has come back in, and he's like, dude, I can't do it anymore. And I look out, and there's a bunch of kids that are from our group that are out there, and they're like struggling to like not die. They're just getting hammered by the waves. So the way a riptide works is when a wave comes in and crashes, the water underneath sucks you out. So if you try and swim like out of it, you can't swim out of it. The only way you can get out of a riptide is if you swim sideways, which goes against the natural human instinct. And you only know how to do that if you've been told. Well, they hadn't been told. And I look out, and there's a couple other guys that weren't from our group that were also out there trying to help, but then they just made the situation worse because then they were way deeper. So I look over at Owen, and he's like asleep. I'm like, whatever, I got this. So I like run out there, and then as I'm running out, I get up to where the water's like at stomach deep. And I kind of like slow down because the waves are starting to hit me. And then over out of the corner of my eye, I see Owen. He like thinks he's Aquaman. He runs and he like dives through a wave. And yeah, it didn't really do anything. It just looked cool. So Owen and I swim out there, and we start grabbing the kids. And Owen and I are pretty good swimmers. So like it was kind of hard to swim, and we were still getting pounded, but like we didn't think we were gonna die. But these kids like. There was like fear in their eyes. Have you ever looked at someone that like feels like they're gonna die? Like that was the look of all those kids' faces. So we like throw them on this big surfboard, and we're like, don't let go. And I get up on the surfboard to like get up out of the water so I can like see if there's anyone, like any other kids in the water. And I see this guy that I don't know, and he's maybe 30 yards out deeper in the water than us, and he's just getting absolutely bodied by these waves. His like head pops up. And then a big wave comes and just takes it out, and he pops up, and he's like, and like, you can tell like he's not going anywhere, and it's getting worse. And I'm trying to yell at him, I'm like, swim that way, bam! He goes under for a couple seconds, comes up, swim that way, bam! And I'm like, okay, I can try and help him, or probably die myself, or I can just, wish him the best. I wished him the best. And, oh listen, this guy was big. He was at least 3 bills. I mean, he was a pork chop. And if I would have gone out there, he would have just grabbed onto me and drowned both of us. So I gave him the benefit of the doubt and was like, he can probably make it. And somehow he made it out. He must have swam sideways eventually because he got out. I saw him laying on the beach like a beach whale, just throwing up water. Anyways, I told that story because in a riptide, I kind of felt this when I was swimming out there before I got to the surfboard. When you get sucked into a riptide, it not only sucks you under the wave, but it sucks you out and it disorients you because you've got sand and stuff in your face. And as soon as you come up to try and get a breath, another wave hits you. And that's why they're so dangerous. And actually, just kind of an idea of how dangerous it was, we didn't swim in the water the next day, but a guy died the very next day, right where that riptide was the day before. It was a kid, it was like a 12-year-old kid. So like your guys' age was out there swimming, and his dad went out there to try and save him, and he died. So the riptide there was like actually serious. But the idea of a riptide is similar to this idea of bondage. Bondage means to be held under the power of something. Even when you want to get up and get out, and those kids who swam out there, they weren't swimming out there to get caught in a riptide. They were like, oh, we're going to try and surf on this board, right? What started out as a rush, what started out as fun, is now controlling you in an environment that you can't live long under. So that's the idea of bondage. And what ends up happening with bondage is you end up giving up and saying, this is how it ends. And there was one of the kids that was in our group that was like basically saying like, I'm going to die. He was like praying to God, like basically like accepting he was going to die. I didn't tell that part of the story, but that's what ends up happening when you're in bondage, when you've been struggling with something. Maybe you've had an addiction that you've been struggling with for years and years and years, and you end up just saying, you know what, I'm not going to be able to get out of this, and you just give it up. And you say things like, I'm just going to end up another statistic. You look at the statistics, say, for example, of kids that struggle with pornography, and you're like, I'm just going to be another one of those statistics. Everyone else does it. You give up. I'm going to succumb to the same temptation, the same urges. And you want to get up, and you hate where you are. And you're like, man, this is hurting, but it seems like nothing I do can get me out of it. That's bondage. There's this quote, it says, sin will take you further than you want to go, cost you more than you want to pay, and keep you longer than you want to stay. Bondage, it starts off as fun, You're like, oh, I like this movie, or wow, like, this is a really nice post on Instagram. This is exciting. That's kind of a racy scene in this movie. Or, that's a lot of skin that they're showing on that post. You're like, oh, but man, that person's good looking. I wonder what it'd be like to sleep with them, or I wonder what it'd be like to live with them. This is fun. It's not like I'm married or anything. I don't have a boyfriend or girlfriend. I'm not cheating on anyone. It's fun to think about. And it starts off as something you can control. And it ends up like Samson. Samson was thinking the whole time that he was telling Delilah, if you do this, you'll lose my strength, knowing that it wouldn't work. He's like, oh, just bring new ropes. I can break out of them. That arrogance. They can't stop me. Find my hair, they can't stop me. Then he gets a haircut, he wakes up with the same attitude, the same arrogance. He says, oh, I'm going to shake myself free. No, you won't, Samson. But that's how this sexual temptation and this bondage, these different things that we can get bound to, work, saying, oh, it's just a quick look. It's just a thought. It's just a flirty moment, just a harmless Snapchat, just a DM. It's just second base. It's just a video that I'm watching. It doesn't hurt anything. And then you wake up one day and you can't get up. What happened? You're in bondage. You might say, bondage, that's a really strong word. Bondage. No, not me. I'm not in bondage. No, that can't be me. But when it comes to our morality, we're held under by this unseen force, and we can't get up, and so oftentimes we sit there and we wonder why. Why can't I get up? Why can't I break free of this? And what happens when we're in this place is, we start to hate it. We try and get out, and we get stuck in this sick cycle where, maybe we're good for a week, or maybe it's a month or 2 months. But then we fall back into it. You get a Snapchat from that person, or you get a DM from that person, or you see a certain post that makes you feel some kind of way on TikTok or Twitter or Snapchat or Instagram, whatever it may be. And then you're back in it again. You're back in that cycle. And you're like, oh my goodness. You're like, why can't I get out of this? And then you're like, you know what? I'm going to try harder. I'm going to try harder to not get stuck in this. I won't do it anymore. I'm going to beat this. And it's just like Samson saying, look, I'll shake myself free. I'll get out of this. Just like those kids were no match for that riptide. They went out there just looking for fun, even though there was riptide warnings out that day. They're like, you know what, it's just fun. I won't go out too deep. I'm just going to surf in about 5 feet of water. And then before they knew it, they were stuck. They couldn't get out. In the same way that a kid's no match for a riptide, that Samson was no match once he got his hair cut, you're no match for this sexual temptation and sin. You fall into the same trap as Samson. The trap of pride and humanism and thinking that you'll shake yourself free, saying things like, oh, I'll just delete those apps off my phone for a couple of days. Or, I'm gonna unfriend those people. I'll stop following that person. I'll put a blocker on my phone. And all of those things are great. I'm not going to tell you to not do that, but those are only going to give you temporary relief. What you really need is a heart change. And the point of all this is that there's only one hope. Only one hope, and that's Jesus. And so quick, we forget how salvation happens. How many times have you either heard this or thought this in your head, where you're like, oh, if you struggle with this sin, like, you got to work hard to get better at it. And you got to do this, and you got to do that. But that's not at all how salvation works. For how you are saved is how you are sustained. And how you are sustained is how you are set free for the rest of your life. We see in Ephesians chapter 2, verse 4, Paul says, you can get that up on the screen. It says, But God. But God. Not but Braden, or but Kinley, but Ryan. No, none of your buts saved anyone. But God. But God. That's the entire gospel right there. You ever hear someone say to you, I really like you. I think you're really funny. You're all right. But I'm just going to say, whatever they said before the but don't mean anything. None of that means anything. The only thing that matters is what comes after the but. And that's the same way that it works in the gospel, You were dead. You were sinners. You were selfish. You were arrogant. You were prideful. You were dead in the eyes of God. But God. And everything that came before the but doesn't matter, because what comes after the but changes everything.
Yeah.
What comes after the but is God and Jesus and redemption and mercy and grace. Somebody say, but God.
But God.
But God. He says again, but God, who is rich in mercy because of his great love with which he loved us.
Yeah.
Guys, God saved you not because of what was in you, but because of what was in him.
Yeah.
Because of his love, his goodness, his mercy, his grace.
Yep.
Even when we were dead. When we were dead.
Yeah.
How many of you guys have ever gone to a funeral?
Yes.
And you guys walked up to the person laying in the casket, and you're like, you know what? You got great character. I'm saying that to the dead person. You got great character. Like, what? No, he's dead. He maybe had great character, but he doesn't have great character now. You're like, no. I mean, look how considerate he is. He's being really patient right now. What? Like, nobody says that, right? Like, dude, he's dead. Doesn't make any sense. There's no merit left there. He's dead. But that's what we were, guys. We were dead, and God loved us and chose us while we were still dead, while we were still sinners.
Yeah.
You don't look at dead people and say, oh, you're great. Like, no, you don't say that. But that was you and me. It says, but God, who was rich in mercy, while we were still dead in our trespasses, made us alive together with Christ by grace. Guys, you've been saved. This is good news. This is how you get saved.
Yeah.
It's not anything that you can do. It's not like you work to get better merit before God, to be in better standing with God. That's not at all how salvation works, and so often we get that twisted. This is the reason why we can say there's no outsiders in Jesus. That's the reason why we've got that thing on the wall right there. It says, we belong here. I wanted that made, and I put that up on the wall before we ever had a youth service here, because all of you guys belong here. It doesn't matter if you guys grew up Catholic or Baptist or Lutheran or AG or non-denominational, or maybe you grew up atheist. It doesn't matter. We belong here because one thing we all share in common is we all believe in Jesus. You don't have to be anything because he's already everything, and he loves you. It's not about who's better or who's worse. He doesn't come to you based on you or based on something you've done. Based on something you've done. He comes to you because of who he is. This is the gospel. See, like all of our good works, all of the things that we do, those are all secondary, and I think those are in a response to what God has done for us, his initiative, his grace, his goodness. And if that's the case, if that's the way that you're saved, then that's the same way that you're sustained, and that's the same way that you're set free. You don't have to try and hide your sins from God. You don't have to try and keep those secret sins that you think nobody knows about, you haven't even told your best friend about. You don't need to try and hide those from God because you think, oh, maybe God will think less of me. Guys, God already knows what you're going through.
Yeah.
He already knows the things that you're hiding. And you aren't going to be set free by just working harder at that, or just trying better to not struggle with those things anymore. You're set free based on his love, on his goodness, and on his grace. So right now, with all of that laid out, all of that put in place, we're going to play a little video clip. If Braden can pull that up. Guys, this is a scene from the movie Passion of the Christ. And for those of you that haven't seen it, it would make sense because it's rated R. It's a movie about the Passion event, which is the story of Jesus going up to the cross. And the movie had to be rated R because if it wasn't rated R, it couldn't show the true thing, the events the way they really took place. Because the movie is brutal. It's really, really hard to watch. And well, I'm not going to be playing anything super brutal like that because it's a lot. But I am going to show you a specific part of the movie. You just got to click the green button if you can't.
No Wi-Fi.
No Wi-Fi?
No.
It might have already preloaded.
No. We can react it.
Do you want to connect to my Wi-Fi hotspot?
No, Peyton, just reenact it. Show us what happened.
Okay. You know what?
It's pretty rough.
You guys will get the Wi-Fi working. I know you will. You guys are all smart. That's okay if you guys can't play it. I can summarize. So this is what happened. So Jesus has been arrested, right? You guys know the story. He was in the garden, and Judas betrayed him, and he came there with the soldiers to go and take Jesus. You know, Peter takes the sword. He thinks he's doing the right thing, goes and cuts off the ear of Malchus. I'm pretty sure that's his name. That was the name of one of the soldiers there. Jesus says, you know, those men who live by the sword dies by the sword. Jesus gets taken on trial before Pilate. Pilate would be like the governor of Illinois, basically. He was in charge of that area. He was a Roman official in charge of that area. And Pilate takes Jesus, he talks to him, and he's like, listen, dude, like, I don't see a problem with you, but all these Jews are like saying that you're having like blasphemy and you know, saying that you're the king of the Jews and you're mocking their God. Is any of this true? And Jesus doesn't even bother defending himself. Okay, it looks like we might have it, potentially. And Pilate takes Judas and Barabbas. Barabbas is this criminal, he's this thug, this crook. He leads a rebellion against Rome. And it's alright, just don't pay attention to that. Just listen to me, I'm explaining it. And the Jews have this custom, on a holy day, the Romans who occupied the area would release one prisoner on death row. So Pilate takes Barabbas, who is like the worst guy that you could possibly think of. Alright, think of someone who goes and shoots up a school, right? Say he went and shot up a school, and he raped people, he did all these terrible things. The worst criminal you can imagine. He's like, alright, you can either release this guy, or you can release Jesus. And they start thinking, and alright, here we go. So that's kind of setting the stage. If we get this full screen, we'll be good. You gonna play?
Oh, no.
That's Barabbas. Oh no, hey, one second. Pause it. You gotta rewind it. You gotta rewind it. It's alright. I'll get it. I'm sorry guys, I wasn't planning on the internet going out or whatever happens. Here we go. I'll rewind it to about, is that 48? I can't see on the screen.
It's 48:21. That's 48.
That guy's nose with the helmet.
Alright, so this is Pilate with his wife before. Can you play it louder?
I'm working on it. I got it.
I was playing through the soundbar.
Yeah, I know.
Ερώτος μαλακά, ο κασκάς την πένας να. وانا لا خشكا خيط دبرات. kom di kursana, achizik bilkom avet rashaka. Yan anak na nakasim beit ezuri. Ratzeka idea, Barabbas. Edan man bain antum yechizik bilkom. Ratzeka Barabbas o Yeshua, kri Meshiach.
הוא לא משיח, הוא רמה, הוא חלל. שציפ ברבא.
Esher continued. Man min tre na yechizik bilkom.
שציפ ברבא!
אם ישו אמצרת.
יצטלם!
מוזיק מלכות. דיין אשלקת. Provvedo castigatio severa siete damnate, sed noi simile eus eum uccidere.
Alright, you'll want to stop it.
Oh, you don't want.
So what we just saw there, that kind of helps explain it a little bit better than maybe me just saying it. All right, hey, no more talking for the rest of it, all right? So we see in this story, and as you're reading through the Gospels, like Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, they're all telling kind of the same story. Some of them tell it a little bit differently with different phrases and stuff, but for the most part, this entire time, it's just following Jesus, just saying what Jesus is doing, what he's saying. And everything seems to be kind of hand in hand. And we go here where Pilate takes Jesus before the Pharisees. And there's this one character that seems to interrupt a little bit. Like you guys saw, his name was Barabbas. You know, and we don't know much about him other than the fact that he's a murderer. He leads a rebellion against Rome. He's a crook, and he's the leader of this bad group of people. And why he's even mentioned in here, sometimes I'm not too sure. You know, it's as you're reading, it's like, you know, this is about Jesus going to the cross, but no, it's almost a love story. So Pilate, this leader of Rome, you know, he stands before this group of people, and before he did this, he wanted to kind of talk to Jesus for himself and, you know, see if there's any merit to what the Jews are saying. Hey, no more talking for the rest of the service, okay? Alright. So, Pilate's talking to Jesus. And he's saying, listen, like all these people are accusing you of insulting their God, of saying you're a false Messiah. And Jesus just stays really quiet during this time. And I love how the conversation goes. You can see in John 19, it says, "Then Pilate said to him, 'Are you not speaking to me? Do you not know that I have the power to crucify you and the power to release you?' Jesus answered, 'You can have no power at all against me unless it had been given to you from above.'" In other words, Pilate, this is not a tragedy. Pilate, you're not the pilot here. You're not the captain of this ship. This is my Father. Don't be fooled, guys. This wasn't a murder. This wasn't a tragedy. This was the plan and purpose of an almighty, loving, and gracious God. So in this moment where Paul takes Jesus and he takes Barabbas, and he's holding the two destinies of these two men here in an almost heretical, audacious way, you know, where he can release one of them and crucify the other one. On one hand, he's got this horrible man, this rebel, this murderer, this crook, and on the other hand, he's got the Son of God who lived a perfect life, stands before all of them and says, "All right, who do you want?" And you see them thinking about it. You see the Jews and the Pharisees thinking about it, and they say, "Give us Barabbas." What? Yeah, give us Barabbas. And you know, when I'm reading this, you know, I remember I was reading this the last couple of days, and I'm just thinking, like, God, no, you can't do this. This is too far. This is just unnecessary. This is blasphemy. There's no comparison. One of them's a rightful prisoner who deserves the chains. He deserves the punishment. And you got Jesus? I mean, there's no comparison. I mean, what has Jesus done but heal and restore and open blind eyes and heal the lame and the leper? There's no comparison. People say they want Barabbas. Pilate goes, "All right, I guess the people have spoken." But it wasn't the people who decided, guys. Just like it wasn't the Roman soldiers who put Jesus' hands and feet on the cross. That was love and mercy and sovereignty. That was God. So they say, "Give us Barabbas." The guards walk up to Barabbas with his chains and his shackles, and they put the keys in him and they take him off. Barabbas gets all excited and he's welcomed by his thug friends. He's like, "Yeah, people love me. Yeah, I don't even know who this Jesus guy is. I don't care. The people love me." There seems to be no conscience in Barabbas. There's no record of him turning to Jesus and saying, "Thank you, I owe you everything. You're the reason why I'm walking free." You don't see any of that in Barabbas. Right now I'm going to invite Callie to come up and just start playing. You know, and as I saw that, as I was reading that through when I was preparing for this, I remember thinking, but God, this guy, not only is he the one that deserves this punishment, but he doesn't even recognize what Jesus just did for him. And I felt like the Holy Spirit was just speaking to me when I was reading this. And God knew that. You know, there's probably some people in your life that you can think of that maybe have some sort of merit, right? Like they're a good person in your eyes, whatever that may mean to you. Maybe they do good things, they go to church, and you're like, yeah, like, you know, maybe they're even worth saving, if you will. They've got some sort of merit. But what does Barabbas even have that could possibly make him worthy to be set free here? Jesus knew this, yet he sat there silent. For he knew the will of the Father. He said, "It's fine, Father. Let them take Barabbas. They can have me." Because Jesus knew that the Father would have to treat Jesus like Barabbas, so he could treat Barabbas like Jesus. Barabbas thought it was the people that set him free. It wasn't the people, it was the love of a heavenly Father. So Pilate says, "Take him, punish him, scourge him, whip him, give him a crown of thorns, make him carry a cross and hang him on it." And there's a reason why I didn't play that clip for you guys because it's just so brutal that, I mean, first of all, it might be too graphic for some of you guys even to watch, but I know that if I would have watched it, there's no way I could have preached the sermon because I would have been bawling like a baby. The way that Jesus was punished, guys, until you've seen that movie, you really can't understand how brutal it really was. Guys, he was almost unrecognizable how badly he was beaten. In knowing all that, and knowing who Barabbas is, it's just so hard to read this. You know, it's so easy to point fingers at Barabbas and say that he, you know, that this is just wrong and this shouldn't have happened like this. But when I look at this story now, I realize who Barabbas really is. Barabbas is me. It's you. Barabbas is all of us. You guys know what the name Barabbas really means? The name Barabbas in Hebrew means son of a father. Guys, I think God was very intentional with this. Son of a father. No specifics. That's an average, everyday person. Bound by sin that we deserve. You know, Jesus, he's the Son of God who lived a perfect life. Up against this thug and criminal. This guy that seems to just pop into the story and then pop back out. I read this and think, no, not Barabbas, Jesus. You know, maybe do this for one of your disciples, one of your friends. You know, one of these people who in our eyes has done good things and earned some merit. Not Barabbas. Jesus says, yeah, I love Barabbas. You know, and when I was doing research, I was like, but God, there's no record of Barabbas even recognizing what you did for him. He never thanked you. He never went out and had this transformation like Paul where he started saving people. God, not for Barabbas. Yeah, I love Barabbas. You know, I was reading this the other day and it just felt like God was speaking to me and saying, I love Barabbas. I love him. And I wrestled with God. It's like, but God, he's a bad man. It just doesn't make any sense. It's like, yeah, but I love Barabbas. I love him. And I wanted him to go free. You know, but God, didn't you know that he would never thank you? He would never recognize what you did for him? Yeah, but I love Barabbas. For while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. God sent his son for Barabbas, even though that he knew that he would never thank him, he would never recognize what he was doing, and he would walk out that door and never come back. But he loves them. And the audacity of Christians to think that, oh no, I'm in this deep dark trench in my life. I'm going through this trial right now. I better work hard to get myself out. What? Guys, that's the opposite of the gospel. Are you bound? Are you held under the pressure of sin and you seem like you can't get out? You've been struggling with something for a long time and it seems like nothing you do will get you out? Feel like it's controlling you? What are you going to do? Say, oh, I'm going to shake myself free like Samson. I'm going to work harder. I'll do this. I'll do that. No, you won't. Just stop it. You're no match for the powers of hell and darkness without Jesus. There's only one way that you're going to get out of this. There's no answer within yourself, within your own goodness, within your own dedication. There's only one who can save you, and he's the one who took your place. Period. Get it twisted so much. The only one who can take our places is Jesus. He stood on the platform with Pilate and he said, yeah, take Barabbas. Set him free. You guys can have me. And how many times have I stood on the platform with Pilate and Jesus? And I've got these chains on that I walk around with. And Jesus says, it's fine, son. I'll take them. Give them to me. And I say, no, God. God, I deserve these. God, I deserve the sin. I deserve the punishment, the shame. God, don't take them from me. I deserve it. And Jesus is like, no, son, let me take it. Let me take it. I'm like, no, God, I deserve this. God, I deserve this guilt. I deserve it all. He says, no, son, give it to me. No, and oh God, I'm so ashamed. God, I can't give that to you. And I find myself holding on to these chains almost to like satisfy this self-righteousness, this religion in me, you know, where you feel like, I just gotta work at this. I just gotta get better. I just gotta try harder. Jesus says, no, that's not how it works. Just give me your sins. Just give me your shame. Like, no, God, I can't even fathom this. God, this just doesn't make any sense. Jesus wants your sin. He says, give me your shame. Son, give me your shame, daughter. And you're like, but what if I mess up again? God, what if I don't get any better? What if I mess up? God says, I'll still be here. But God, I don't want to let go of this. I don't want to hurt you. God, I hate this. I just want to be done with it. He says, it's all right. Everything's going to be all right. Just give me your sin. Guys, this is all we have. This is all I have. This is all we'll ever have. You know, we can play games. We can play church games. Talk about who's better than whose sin is worse than each other. Or we can all come to the honest conclusion that it's just Jesus. It's God alone. The greatest challenge isn't your discipline or your devotion or your focus or how long you pray for each day. Your greatest challenge is believing and living the gospel. Could it be that there's a God with a love so scandalous and so wide, so deep, so high, so amazing, so inclusive, so welcoming? God says, let me have your sin, son. I say, okay. And I give it to him. And I stand in this empty place of just forgiveness and acceptance. While Jesus walks off to the cross that I deserve, carrying my sin. And I see him going up to be whipped and be beaten, with a crown of thorns put on his head. I stand there watching it, and you hear God say, go on, son. Be free. Live your life. You don't need to do anything, because I've already done everything. You know, where did we get off thinking that it was ourselves that set us free? That it was our own merit. It was how we lived, you know, what we did in our life. Or what we didn't do. Guys, the reality is that it was Jesus in this story, and it'll always be Jesus now, no matter what. Because his blood is sufficient for you. Guys, he died for us while we were still sinners, while we were still dead. And if his blood is sufficient to sustain you, through every sin and every challenge and every temptation, guys, Jesus is enough. So we just need to get this idea out of our heads that if we've been struggling with something, if we feel like we're in bondage, or there's this sin that we just can't seem to get rid of, that we just need to work harder. Or we just need to try and break free. Like Samson. Guys, that's not the gospel at all. Jesus, he wants your sin today. I'm going to invite you guys to stand up right now. I'm about to go back into a time of worship. Guys, Jesus wants your sin today. He's reaching out his hands. He's saying, just let me have it. Just let me have it. He's already forgiven you. It's almost this thing where we need to forgive ourselves. It's humbling, right? Because this self-righteousness, it's like, no, I got myself in this hole, I need to try and dig myself out. It's humbling to just say, God, I'm sorry. Here's my sin. But that's what God wants us to do. So right now, I'm just going to go back into a time of worship and prayer. So if you guys will all bow your heads with me.
Got me out here looking